Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murox ASP.NET 4.6 with C# 2015 6th edition. We are in the middle of Chapter 18 of our text, How to Use Model Binding and the Entity Framework. If I had to guess, I would say I'm going to have 7 lectures for this chapter, and I'm in the beginning of Lecture 5 right now. So I'm on page 666 on how to use model binding to update, insert, and delete data. And the author mentions on the top of the page, in addition to displaying data using model binding, you need to be able to update, insert, and delete data. In other words, we talked about the R, read, in CRUD. Now we got to talk about C, creating, or like an insert, U, updating, and D, deleting. So in the example that you see on the screen right here, it shows a grid view that displays category data, and then underneath it is a details view that displays the category that's selected from the grid view that's up above it. The details view lets the user update or delete the selected category. It also, if you look at, it also is going to allow you to insert a new category, which is then going to be displayed up here. Now, we've selected one already, so we're in update mode. That's why you don't see the thing down here that will actually show the inserting. Now, the ASPX code that goes along with that is shown right here. The details view control that's right here has its select method set to the name of the method that selects the data and displays it in the item type property. Because this details view control also handles updates, inserts, and deletes, some additional properties are also going to be set, such as the data key names property contains the name of the primary key, which in this case, the primary key is the category ID. This property is not generated for you when you create the details view control, so you need to add it. That's because it's used by update, insert, and delete. Then the update, insert, and delete methods contain the names of the methods in the code behind that perform the operations. So notice we've got here update item, insert item, and delete item. All right. There's DV category update, there's DV category insert, and there's DV category delete. So to update an item, you again have to specify the name of the update method on the update method property of the bound control. This method should update the object in the object model and then update the database. And that's what we're going to look at in just a minute. So that's right here. To insert an item, you specify the name of the insert method on the insert method property control. And again, this method should add an object to the object model and then update the database. And then finally, to delete, you specify the name of the delete method, property of the bound control. And this method is used to mark for deletion and then again, update the database. So pages 668 and 669 show figure 1815, which presents the method stubs that Visual Studio automatically generates for update, insert, and delete. Notice that the update and the insert use fully qualified names for the entity type. So it's C dot, the category. Both the update and delete methods are defined with a parameter that will receive a key value. So in other words, you're saying what you want to update or what you want to delete. It's very similar to what we talked about when we were just talking about databases, where if you just say update categories, for example, set long description to hello, that would set the long description for every category to hello. You wouldn't want that. Or if you said update products, set quantity on hand to 100, if you didn't put a where condition in there, that would update every on hand to 100 or 200 or whatever I just said. So the code for the update in the insert patterns or methods suggests patterns to use for updating and inserting an item. Specifically, when we talk about the code for updating here, it suggests that you select the item to be updated, notify the user if it doesn't exist, update the model if it does exist, and update the database if there are no errors. All right, so we do a check. Once that check, if it's null, we're done. But if the check, if it's not null, then we put everything in here. So to update the object model with a newer unified object, or modified object, I should say, the code for the update and insert methods both use this try update model. So it's in both of them. Now there's no pattern for the delete. All right, it's because you usually don't need to get user input for a delete. So figure 1816, the next several slides here, are shown on pages 670 and 671. And as the author mentions, these examples that are here show how you can modify the generated code that we saw earlier to complete the update, insert, and delete methods. These assume that a class variable named db, which refers to the context, was already created, and it was created as a class level variable, so it's able to be used in all of these methods. It also assumes that a using directive has been added for the model's namespace in the app, as we saw a lot earlier. So the update method that's shown here accepts a string parameter named category ID. It's required that this parameter have the same name and data type as the key field specified in the data key names property of the details view control back in our ASPX code. Then we follow that same pattern that we talked about before. We check to see if the category exists in the database. If it doesn't, we give them a message, and basically all we do is we just return everything. Otherwise, we call the try update model to update the category object with the values in the details view. After that, we check to see if the try update model generated any errors. If it did not, we save the database. All right. Then we bind the grid view control so that we can display what we've just done. And again, similar things are done for the insert. And the delete also checks for null. So, how do we handle this if we have concurrency exceptions? Remember what a concurrency exception is. All right, we can have a concurrency exception if two people try to write to the same table at the same time. We can also have data validation exceptions. Now these are all string fields, so the only way this should fail is if we leave any one or any two or all three of the fields blank. So the author says on 672 and 673, as you know, you can handle concurrency exceptions when you use the entity framework by coding the save changes method in a try block or a try catch statement, and then reloading the new values from the database if an exception occurs. So what they show in here is how to do that, and this is the middle of page 673. This catches both concurrency and data validation expressions. So the data validation are going to be shown up here in a validation summary. But if we get this, we're going to handle it basically by, I believe, just showing everything. It's as though that, you know, if we're calling something that doesn't exist, we just return everything. So we're just reloading the data from the database. And here is the associated code, I believe. All right. On 674 and 675, the author talks about how to use a data access class with model binding, and says up at the top of the page, as you've seen, when you use Visual Studio to generate the starting code for the methods of a data control that uses model binding, the code is stored in a code behind file. As you'll learn in Chapter 17, however, it's considered a best practice to put your data access code in a separate class. So they show you how to do this in here. So what we do this in this on-calling method, we're going to end up creating our own method, and that method is going to come in here, and notice it's going to create a new class. All right, and so remember, a data access class that's used with model binding needs an instance of the object context. All right, typically you'll put that in the constructor. To use a data access class, you must include an event handler for the calling data methods event of the bound control. This should create an instance of the data access class and assign it to the data method's object property of the calling data method event args object. So what you're seeing here is how the ASPX code is calling stuff in the actual C# code, and how the two of them are working in tandem, so to speak, to get the job done. All right. Starting on page 676, we've got a product maintenance application. And I'm at 12 minutes, so I'm going to stop right now. But that product maintenance application will look similar to the one in Chapter 15. We'll go over that in the next lecture.